close and let me begin to show you how I love you. I'm begging for us.
Been thinking about the little thing you said. It doesn't sink in, and you pulled apart my head. 'Cause I'm scared, I can't lie, I don't feel the same inside. I can't decide if I have the heart to confess. And I don't think I'm ready to go in this heavy. I thought we would take it slow. And now you got that feeling, you say that you mean it. But for me, I just don't know. I can't see it, I don't feel it. I need to dig a little deeper. I can't say that, I won't say it back. I need to dig a little deeper, a little deeper. There ain't no contract, and I go when I choose to lay, and I don't want that. And it's not something that I need, and you know that it takes two, and I don't feel the same as you when I think back. I've seen how I always knew, and I don't think I'm ready to go in this heavy. I thought we would take it slow, and now you got that feeling, you say that you mean it. But for me, I just don't know. I can't see it, I don't feel it. I need to dig a little deeper. I can't say that, I won't say it back. I need to dig a little deeper, dig a little deeper. I just don't know. I just don't know. Got no feeling in my soul for you. I just don't know. I just don't know. I can't see it. I don't feel it.
Good morning. Great. It's fantastic to be here in Amsterdam, in Netherlands this morning, and amongst all of you. We have a very diverse group of people. We have IT pros and developers. We have business decision makers and CTOs. And the event and today's agenda is aptly called Taking Action. And to take action, you need this very diverse group of people to come together and, in some sense, imagine the future, but more importantly, come together to make it a reality. And talking about the opportunity going forward, I think what's happening with digital technology is unprecedented. Everywhere we look in our lives and in our societies and in our economy, the pervasiveness of this technology is tremendous. And it's up to us to figure out how we really capitalize on that opportunity. If you think about it, every place, whether it's the home, whether it's work, or whether it's the stadiums, are all getting embedded with computing. Everything out there is getting embedded, whether it's the car, whether it's the refrigerator, whether it's the factory, and every industry, whether it's in oil and gas or in retail or in shipping or in manufacturing, are all fundamentally being transformed because computing is getting embedded in the real world. And that's really the opportunity for all of us to seize on. Now, the simplest way, at least I think about what really the job ahead for us is tech intensity. In other words, it doesn't matter which part of the economy you participate in. The real question is, do you have digital tech intensity in how you go about creating the product, the service, driving the business process? The formula for tech intensity is actually pretty straightforward. There are two things that need to happen. You need to be able to take technology that is available and adopt it very quickly. And second, you want to build your own digital capability in every business. Because there is no business that is not software driven or digital. Now, there are many nuances though. For example, one of the first considerations, which I think is very important, is you want to make sure that your own resource, your own capital, your own operating expenses are focused very specifically on things that you can uniquely do versus what is available as essentially a commodity from someone else, right? Because if you have all of your resource doing things that are not unique capability, that is key to how you differentiate in the marketplace, you would waste a lot of time and energy. So being very on top of how do you make sure that you're getting the latest technology, but at the same time building your own capability is key. Now the second element is you need real trust in the technology that you adopt. Right? It's not about, and the trust goes way beyond just the security aspects of it or the privacy aspects of it, which are all important considerations, and we'll talk a little more about it. But the trust goes into business model trust. In fact, it is so important in a world where digital network effects get created for you to have essentially a supply chain that is not competing with you in the marketplace. So when you think about how you partner, you need to think about even the more strategic considerations of technology supply chain. And I think these are the things that everybody who's thinking about building tech intensity needs to keep first class. Now, when you think about the tech intensity, for us at Microsoft, our mission to empower every person and every organization on the planet to achieve more is fundamentally about creating that tech intensity in every one of your businesses. That's our core mission. Right? These are just not a set of words for us. There are many, many key things that it tells us in terms of the decisions we make on a daily basis, in terms of the products we create, how we show up with customers, how we partner, are all defined by this mission. We care deeply about people, but we also deeply care about institutions people build to outlast them. That's a first-class software construct. If there's something that is unique about Microsoft's DNA is we think about institutions that people are constructing and building and making sure that they thrive. We obviously think about it at a global scale, but most importantly, we have our business model 100% aligned with success of our customers. That is, at the end of the day, the most important thing. In other words, we won't succeed, cannot succeed, will not succeed if our customers don't succeed. And it can be a student writing a term paper, it can be a small business becoming more productive, it can be a public sector organization that's getting more efficient, or a large multinational that's becoming more competitive. it's those outcomes, those successes that we celebrate. If you go back to the very genesis of Microsoft, it was created as a tools company, a platform company. We always created technology so that others can create more technology. And what was true in 1975 is more true in 2018. And that's really who we are and what we are trying to get done. Now, the way we realize this mission is building out this very rich, intelligent cloud and intelligent edge platform. This is the defining paradigm of our times. And the best way to conceptualize this is to take all of the solutions we're building. You'll hear a lot even today about the products, whether it's Microsoft 365, Dynamics 365, or Azure. Fundamentally, they represent these solutions that we are bringing together for modern work or business applications, data and AI, or applications and infrastructure. These solutions are all built on this defining paradigm of the intelligent cloud and the intelligent edge. But the real goal here is to drive these digital transformational outcomes. Because technology for technology's sake is not what we want to celebrate. We want to celebrate how is this technology being used to fundamentally reshape how you engage customers, how you empower your own people inside your organizations, how are you redefining the operations and optimizing the operations, how are you transforming the very nature of the product or the service you're building. That's digital transformational outcomes is what we are focused on. And in order to really shape this, we're building out Azure as the world's computer. We have now 54 data center regions around the world. That means in each region we have multiple data centers. And this means we have this ubiquitous fabric of computing so that you as developers, you as businesses can take advantage of it. And in fact, in Europe alone, we have close to 8 regions today, 6 more coming. We've been operating in Netherlands for the last 10 years. So compute capacity. In fact, I started in this business when it was just beginning, and I myself find it hard to recognize the pace of change and how it's no longer that we're just building a data center, but we're building the collection of these data centers as one giant computer. In fact, if you think about the network fabric that we have that connects all of these data center regions around the world, you can go to the moon 3 times and back. So really, we are at a scale and ability to put unimaginable compute resources and give it to any developer anywhere in the world is fascinating to see. Now, we're not just stopping there, right? One of the most important things is, as we think about cloud, the most interesting aspects of cloud computing are happening at the edge. Because as computing gets embedded in the real world, you will have gravity of data. That means, let's say you have sensors in factories, you have sensors in stadiums. You're going to collect lots of data. And compute will have to migrate to where the data is being collected, because even the laws of physics will be such that you can't rendezvous with the cloud. And that's why we are building out a distributed computing fabric. So it's not just Azure and its data center regions, which we have plenty of, but we have Azure Stack. You can put Azure Stack in any retail outlet. You can put it in a stadium. You can put it anywhere. In fact, one of the applications is really oil fields, where you need a lot of compute capacity at the edge. But we don't stop at Azure Stack even. We go to the next step and really have Azure IoT runtime that can run on any system. But one of the most interesting pieces of innovation I'm very excited about is there are 9 billion microcontrollers that get shipped, right? These are the things that are compute units in your microwave ovens or thermostats or refrigerators. And one of the issues is, of course, even security. So what we're doing is we're building out a silicon design an operating system and a cloud service that guarantees the security so that any intelligent thing going forward can in fact have an intelligent Azure compute node. So this fabric of Azure, Azure Stack, Azure IoT to Azure Sphere is one consistent hybrid computing fabric. One of the most unique characteristics of what we are doing is the consistency of identity, management, security, and data across this compute fabric is what gives you the agility, right? So when you build complex and distributed applications, you want agility and you want to reduce the complexity while ensuring manageability and security, and that's what we're designing for. So it's very exciting to see all of this technology. But the thing that I was thinking about is what we need to talk about, though, is what are the real-world applications? How pervasive is this technology getting? Is it possible for any business to take this technology and reshape their own trajectory of innovation? And so even as I was preparing for this event, I went and sort of searched for what are all the case studies, what are all the customers right here in Netherlands who are able to take this technology and adopt it. And it was fascinating. I had a chance to sort of learn a ton myself in how this technology is being diffused and being used in very novel ways. So these are live examples of tech intensity in Netherlands. So let's start, in fact, with first Royal Dutch Shell. Oil and gas as an industry has always fascinated me. I mean, if you think about it, there is no industry that every day has to adjust based on what's happening in commodity prices. So in some sense, it's probably the one industry that is the most real time, but yet has real long capital investment cycles. And it's a very interesting juxtaposition of two very big challenges. And Royal Dutch Shell is doing an amazing job, for example, of taking AI and deploying it across the board. They have built their own capability to do this very high precision work around drilling, right? After all, drilling is the most mission critical work they have. They have built their own AI capability to be able to do that with the precision. But now here's the interesting thing. Having built their own AI capability, they went and looked around and said, okay, what is the next wave of technology that can in fact bring more scale, more agility? So let's say you built a model and you want to take that model and deploy it across all of the oil rigs and oil wells around the world. And to do that, they went and said, okay, who is doing cutting edge work around reinforcement learning? So there is a unit of Microsoft called Bonsai. And it's based on reinforcement learning using machine teaching. So they took some of the most cutting-edge work that's happening out there and you are using this simulation capability to create that unit of scale for them. So that's, I think, a great example of someone who's already committed to doing world-class work, but is also constantly looking for other inputs that can reshape how they go about their work. Second, they also were looking at how to take all of the assets they have and turn those assets into connected assets, and so that they can do things like preventive maintenance, have real predictive power on all of these assets. So they adopted a platform, which is an Azure partner called C3 IoT, and are making that broadly their platform for some of the IoT work that they're doing. And lastly, right, it's not just in the core of their operations. Even with all of the, their oil stations that they run, in fact, in Asia Pacific is where they're first experimenting. They want to make sure that there is real safety. So the last thing you want is a fire in any oil station. So therefore, what they have is commodity cameras that are watching to see if there is any activity that could be dangerous. And for that, they're just using all of the Azure pre-built AI capabilities and are deploying, in fact, that AI model for computer vision at the edge. They may do training in the cloud, but they do the inference in the edge. So it's a great example, I find, of someone who is looking at how AI is progressing, really using that in the context of their own business operations, building their own capability, but are also, in a very smart way, taking technology that's available to build themselves that AI capability. So that's a great example of someone who is going about that. Another example is Ahold Delhaize, which is obviously a great retailer out of Netherlands that is, serving something like 50 million retail shoppers a week, from what I'm told. So amazing scale. And in retail, if you think about it, the real challenge is what people describe as that omni-channel presence. But more importantly, it's the omni-channel deep personalization. Because the future of retail is all going to be about knowing your customer, but knowing your customer in such a way that you can shape the shopping experience, whether it's online or offline, or in fact, a combination of online and offline. So they are, again, using AI and the cloud to build that capability. But what I found when I sort of at least started reading about this, very interesting was, if you look at it, consumer behavior is perhaps the toughest thing to predict. You, in fact, don't want to try and make big predictions on consumer behavior. What you want is experimentation throughput, so that you can quickly try out lots and lots of ideas. And then that way you can continuously optimize the kinds of experiences you want to create. And that is only possible if you take all of the data asset you have and create an applied AI and applied ML harness on top of it. And that's a no regrets way of being able to build your tech capability and tech intensity. And that's what they're doing. So they've built their data estate in Azure. And then that data estate is really going to not just help them with the deep personalization, but will also help them optimize operations and many, many other avenues of transformation using digital technology. Now, another example is, I learned a lot about shipping and dredging. Fanord it's a fascinating business because I had not realized how process-driven this industry is. In other words, I think as the ship is moving, you need to keep documenting every step, getting these certificates, and then making sure that they're always auditable. So it's one of the most paper process intensive businesses I've ever seen. And it can easily bring the agility of their process down if you don't digitize it. And so that's exactly what they're doing, which is they're taking every piece of paper, every certificate that needs documentation, digitizing it on a continuous basis, using, again, even things like optical recognition and scanning so that you can then turn that into a digitized format. And it's continuously available for multiple constituents. So that means if you want to audit it, you can get it. If you are a customer of it, in fact, they're exposing it back to the customer so that the customer can track the dredging progress. So it's a fascinating way to take what has been perhaps an impediment, but turning it into a digital asset. And once you have something that is a process that's been digitized, it gives you a much more flexibility and visibility to all the constituents. So it's another great example of someone using technology to transform and change the tech curve. Now, one of the fun examples I came across was this very stadium we're in. Johan Cruyff, obviously is the home for the national football team, and the most mission critical. I mean, in general, in sports, the way sports are played, the way sports are watched, and the way sports are experienced even in the stadium are all going through a fairly radical change. Now, the interesting thing that I had not realized was the most mission-critical piece of this stadium is what? Their turf. And it's a pretty complex, multivariate problem. The turf really is only going to be perfect if you get three things right. You get the temperature right, you get the water right, and I've not realized this, you got to even get the wind right. The grass doesn't grow, I believe, if you don't get the wind right. And so if you look at it, you take this multivariate problem, how do you optimize it? And the best way to optimize it is to take the turf and turn it into a computer. And that's what they've done. They've put IoT sensors all around this turf, and so on a continuous basis, data is being streamed, and that data is being used to essentially monitor the state of the turf and optimize the turf for any playing condition that you want. And so that's a great example of turning a physical space into a computing experience. And that's right here as we speak. So it's fantastic to see this kind of tech intensity across the breadth of industries right here in Netherlands. Now, as we celebrate all of this technology and its application and how various businesses are able to harness the power of technology in changing their own businesses, we also have to be very clear-eyed about the unintended consequences of technology. There are, I would say, three major considerations for how we go about building trust in technology. Because that's ultimately what's going to define our success. Because if we sort of have lots and lots of technology, we also have great competence in applying that technology. But if there isn't broad trust in technology, it'll all come to a naught. So these three are the most important considerations for us, as important as building anything. The first area is privacy. At this point, any of us, it's not just us as technology vendors, but each one of you, if you're a retailer, if you are in manufacturing, you're in CPG, it doesn't matter which industry you're in, you will have to think about privacy as a human right. In other words, your customers who are now experiencing some of the digital products and services you are building will expect of you to treat their data essentially as a human right. And GDPR obviously has really set the bar, and we have not only done all the hard work to implement GDPR, and we realize that it's just the starting point, right? It's not something that you just achieve as a destination, but it's a continuous vigilance to how are you operationally going to make sure that you're protecting the privacy of your customers. Now, we also taken, for example, the core data subject rights in GDPR and making it available all over the world. So it's not just for the citizens of Europe, but we decided that we're going to not only conform to GDPR in Europe, but we're going to take the data subject rights and make it available across all of our products across the globe. And that's the kind of posture that each of you will also have to take, because going forward, there will be new legislation in other parts of the world which will take a clue from what has happened in Europe. And so privacy, I think, is a very, very important element. The second piece is cybersecurity. Now, as I always say, the cybersecurity is a combination of the operational security posture, the technology products that you adopt, as well as the platforms. In our case, that's really what we're doing, which is we, for example, see something like 6.5 trillion security signals a day. We see 450 billion logins. We scan more than 1 billion machines. We inspect more than 1.2 billion pieces of malware a month. Now, all these numbers are great, but the question really is, how are we able to take the signal value of all this operational data and turn it into products? And in fact, products not just for the largest of businesses, but products for the most vulnerable population that get impacted by cyber crimes, all right? That is small businesses and consumers. And so what we're doing is, whether it's Windows Defender ATP or whether it's Office 365 ATP, the idea is to create products that any consumer, any small business is protected because of the operational security posture we have. Now, we also recognize that it's not just about the security products we create. we need an entire ecosystem of security vendors to come together to help us with our defense. And so that's what we're doing, which is we have exposed the data that we talked about in a security graph, which acts as an open platform for other security vendors to extend, to add to, ultimately with the goal of securing each one of our data estates, each one of our application estates. So that's really what we're doing. We're also going one step beyond that and bringing an industry-wide initiative for what we describe as the Digital Geneva Convention. Because the challenge we have is we need to be able to come together as an industry to essentially protect the citizens of our countries as well as these small businesses, these vulnerable populations. And that's only going to happen if we all commit ourselves to use all of our collective strength to defend. And we hope even nation states are going to join this, because ultimately we need that. We need this level of, I would say, a maturity, not only in the tech industry, but in the broader society, and a new global norm around a Geneva Convention equivalent that can be applied for cybersecurity. The last aspect, which I think is perhaps being talked about a lot today, is ethics and AI. Because we talked a lot about all these various applications of AI. You're able to collect data, you're able to reason over it, and create these magical experiences. I'm a big believer in AI, in fact, creating a lot of good. I'm very, very passionate about AI, for example, changing the lives of billion-plus people with disabilities around the world. If you are someone with visual impairment, you now can have applications that guide you through sound or through computer vision. If you have dyslexia, you can read because of the ability to have learning tools. So really, the way technology, in particular AI, is helping people who could not participate fully in our societies and in our economies in the past to be able to do so is phenomenal. But that said, we have to also acknowledge that there are many challenges of AI. To me, I think it starts with us as creators of AI to have a set of design principles. For example, I think it's a choice that one makes to augment human capability, right? You can, in fact, decide that you're going to use AI to augment human capability. That's a posture that you can take from a design perspective. That's what we're doing at Microsoft. We've also codified 6 principles. Just like in the early 2000s, we all learned what does it mean to build secure programs, how to do threat modeling. We now need to build secure AI. That means fairness, robustness, privacy and security, transparency and inclusiveness, as well as accountability, are concrete design principles that we are teaching and training every software developer, every designer, every product maker inside Microsoft so that we can build AI that is ethically grounded. So that's a very core process. Now, being a platform and a tools company, we're just not leaving it there. We're also investing in the software engineering of AI, because one of the most immature parts of AI is the software engineering practice around AI. For example, take language. The way you train language is you do one of these black box end-to-end training on top of a bunch of human corpus data. Now, it's fantastic, except that it's going to pick up all the biases that are there in human corpus. And so you, in fact, need essentially to de-bias the model you just created. So it's kind of like a debugger for AI. And so these word embeddings that get created, you need to be able to de-bias them. So we are building technology for that. In fact, it's fascinating. One of the things is we have data sheets for everything, except we don't have data sheets for data. And so one of the challenges is, how do we make sure that the provenance of data is very well looked after so that you don't train things on data that you don't want to be training on? So these are all things that we are doing, and we also have an ethics board inside Microsoft, which is a diverse group of people who come together to help us ensure that any AI product that we create is being applied with the real appropriate use cases, right? You don't want to take something like facial recognition and apply it in all cases. It's still too immature. There is no such thing as a general purpose facial recognition technology that can be applied if you really don't have a real handle on the use case. And so therefore we need to be able to really have an ethical decision that we have to make in the front lines on how things are being deployed. So these are all the considerations of unintended consequences. Now, to me, as we think about tech intensity, these privacy, security, as well as AI ethics, what is exciting is we're not stopping in terms of pushing the frontiers of technology. In fact, one of the things that is really I'm looking forward to later even today is spending more time with one of our researchers here who is doing some cutting-edge work on what is essentially the next generation of Azure computing. That's quantum. If you think about it, in spite of what all I said, all this compute capacity that we have, 54 data center regions, Azure stack everywhere, and so on, there are so many unsolved problems. We can't yet invent that catalyst that can absorb the carbon dioxide in the atmosphere, right, which we need. We need that in order to really deal with the climate change challenge. We can't really understand the enzyme that's involved in food production or build that lossless power grid, right? These are all, in fact, computational problems that cannot be solved today using a one-Neumann architecture. So we need more compute power. We need more compute capacity. And Microsoft has taken a very novel approach based on some fundamental mathematics around this property of topological qubits and foundational breakthroughs in physics that allow us to, in fact, find these topological properties in a physical particle called a Majorana particle, and that's the work that's actually happening right here in Amsterdam. And then, of course, you need a complete new stack, which is a computer science stack, which deals with quantum, right? So everything that we learned in school, you'll have to set us aside and really rebuild the computing stack and algorithms for a world where you have a quantum computer. In fact, we have a quantum simulator on Azure, which is increasingly being used by many of these players who are thinking about new solutions which couldn't be solved by classical computers. To give you a flavor for this research, I wanted to roll a video on our quantum effort.
When we talk about quantum computing, it's a completely different game.
Quantum computing will enable us to solve problems that currently take longer than the lifetime of the universe in seconds, hours, or days.
We completely reconceive the space in which we do computation.
Quantum computing is like going from crawling to going to a different planet. It's different.
It's only natural that we would want to use the world's most powerful device to combat the world's most challenging problems.
We could attack global warming.
Security,
What are the boundaries of machine learning?
fighting diseases. The possibilities of quantum computers are endless. Microsoft has the best and the brightest working on this problem.
It's really happening. Progress is very fast, and we're building a quantum computer.
What the world wants to know is what happens when we turn the machine on.
What problems will be solvable with a computer that computes in 1 billion parallel universes at the same time.
It's really exciting to see how this technology progresses and as we make it more broadly available. And there are many, many steps on the way to quantum computing. But the idea that we can democratize more and more computational power for more and more people to transform our industries and societies, I think is going to be very important. But while we talk about all this technology, one of the things that we remain grounded is that technology now needs to, in fact, reach all parts of our society to help us address some of our pressing needs. In fact, that's one of the reasons why we have created these programs called AI for Good. Whether it's AI for Earth, AI for Accessibility, these are programs where we are giving grants to nonprofits, research institutions, and other entrepreneurs who are trying to solve these hard challenges, which don't today have markets, but are, need of technology. In fact, a great example right here in the Netherlands is the Red Cross. Now, if you think about how digital technology can change some of the most vulnerable populations that needs help, you want to be able to take the systems that track to help provide the services and make it as friction-free and as targeted as possible. And it's fantastic. I had a chance to read up about how they're using things like Office 365 or Dynamics to change their own services for the populations that need most help. And in fact, very recently, we just announced a new program called AI for Humanitarian Action, so that we can make sure that all of those groups that are working to care for all of those populations, whether it's children, whether it's refugees and other populations who need humanitarian action, get access to these services. Let's roll the video.
Human rights situation often deteriorate very quickly, and the faster we can get the information and we can react to the situation, it can be a real game changer.
New technologies are advancing so rapidly, and technology companies can advise us on how best to use those technologies to protect and promote human rights.
Our objective is automatic damage mapping, because after the disaster, the government needs the damage map to carry out the effective rescue. If we can save the time to grasp the ground damage information, we are able to save a lot of life and facilities.
In a new partnership with the World Bank, United Nations, and tech industry partners, we'll be better able to predict when and where famine will occur.
Operation Smile's vision really sinks in with what I feel is a fundamental human right.
What the volunteers do for the children may seem like a small thing, but they're able to change the lives of the families forever.
We're creating a chatbot-based experience for refugees coming out of the Syria conflict. The purpose is to have displaced youth find a way to discover and access learning materials. You can engage directly with the course content.
It's just the beginning of the impact that we hope to have with the tools at our disposal.
And I want to close where I started. Our mission at Microsoft is to ensure that we are empowering every person and every organization, starting right here in Netherlands, so that you all, as a community, as a set of entrepreneurs, can go and achieve more. And imagine a bright future that not only shapes this country, but changes the world. Thank you all very, very much, and great to be here. Thank you.
a peaceful people. Struggle is with struggle, and we don't look for trouble. Just ask around. But when outside faces from foreign places talk about taking over, we ain't backing down. We ain't giving up no mountains, we ain't giving up no tree, we ain't giving up no river that belongs to we. Not one blue sake, not one rice grain, not one karais, not a blade of grass. This land is all I know. We gonna make it somehow. We will bend like a bow and never break. Our fathers came here, and they lived and died here, and we ain't moving nowhere. Big mistake, 'cause we ain't giving up no mountain, we ain't giving up no tree, we ain't giving up no river that belongs to we. Not one blue sake, not one rice grain, not one karais, not a blade of grass. We love the open country of the Rupununi and the Essequibo, daytime or night. Though we may criticize it, this is our home, we love it, and we need to keep it. We have that right. So we ain't giving up no mountain, we ain't giving up no tree, we ain't giving up no river that belongs to we. Not one blue sake, not one rice grain, not one karais, not a blade of grass. So we ain't giving up no mountains, we ain't giving up no tree, we ain't giving up no river that belongs to we. Not one blue sake, not one rice grain, not one karais, not a blade of grass.
A very, very good morning to you all. I apologize for this short delay. My name is Ruud Veltenaar. I'm a philosopher, I'm a TED-speaker, I'm a professor at the Institute International Schools of Business Management and also visiting professor at Nijrode and MIT in Boston. You don't have to be afraid that you get an academic story this morning from a nutty professor. I have a business background, and I'm coming from the IT sector. I was member of the board of directors of Volmac in the 80s, which is nowadays Capgemini. I was the chair of Raad when it was sold to Getronics in the 90s. And I was also the founder of Planet Internet and Parkline and Park Mobile, which were all technology companies. The reason why I tell you this is not to impress you, but most of you maybe don't know me, so now you know from which reference I take you on an expedition to the emerging future. If you see text or videos during my presentation, you don't have to remind everything, you don't have to make notes, everybody can get a full copy of my presentation. And not in PDF, but in PowerPoint, so that it is very easy to copy-paste. You don't have to mention the source, because that's very old-fashioned. You will get an email from Microsoft with a link to my website, so that you can download it. You have to enter a password and 2 other fields. And when you say this was a fantastic morning, 1 terabyte of information will be downloaded at high speed. Right. In the presentation, you will find a lot of links to my sources so that you can check if everything was right, what I was saying, and it gives you also the opportunity to get more in depth when you need more information. My story, dear friends, is about a world in transformation to the next phase in our society. And as Satya said, that Microsoft is trying to facilitate technology to its customers to achieve more. I believe that's not enough. It depends on how you define more. Is it more clients, more market share, more profit, more turnover? Or is it more in the sense of creating a better world? And that's what I believe as a philosopher is where we need technology. Not to make more money, but to create a better world, making more money as a result of it, instead of as a goal. So this transformation to the next phase in our society will shift our focus over the next decennia. From a focus on welfare to more well-being, in thinking, in creating more success, more money, more market share, in how can we use resources, including technology, to create a better world. It's a transformation from I, the silo, to we who think about doing our work and live our lives by creating more financially, socially, and ecologically value for society. That's what the story is all about. And of course, I will put it in the context of technology. And nowadays, when we talk about this huge paradigm shift, there are a lot of trend watchers, singularity ambassadors, who talks about technology all the time. And they believe and predict that technology will create a better world as a result of the technology itself, which is, of course, not the case. And I will give you one example why I'm so worried when we listen to technology people and when we listen to futurists or trend watchers and they tell us stories like this one, and I hope the video works. And this video is about a trend watcher who says in the future it might be possible to get in a situation to upload our mind, and the question he raised is, will we still be we, and who controls our mind? Listen to this guy.
Human beings are endowed with this miracle of self-reference. We call it consciousness, this capacity to be self-aware, to reflect upon ourselves. Now, consciousness remains a mystery. The question, of course, is, can consciousness be reduced to a pattern of information, right? I mean, our cells turn over all the time. Apparently something like every 7 years, we are an entirely new organism, yet something persists. The pattern persists. And if consciousness can be reduced to just being a pattern of information, then it raises the question of whether or not we can substitute our biological substrate for an alternative housing for our consciousness. So the idea of mind uploading would be a form of technologically mediated.
And he goes on and he goes on and he goes on about technology. Forget that we are human beings. And a week ago, I was at a conference for 1,400 teachers among the audience. And there was a futurist talking to them about technology. And he was talking about technology in a sense of artificial intelligence will create a better world. We will have autonomous cars, and when we click a button, it will be in front of our door within 20 seconds, bringing us almost for nothing anywhere you want to. He was talking about sex with robots, and he was really getting excited about it when he was talking about it. Really? He looks a little bit exhausted, so I think he had at least 4 at home at every store. Truly, truly. And he was telling those 1,400 teachers that in the near future, within 10 years, there will be robots in front of the classroom. And you should have looked all at the faces of these teachers. They were looking like this. My God, what about my mortgage? What about my kids who are at the university? Nobody was thinking about kids at school. They were all thinking about themselves. And then when I came to stage, I saw them look at me as a philosopher and were asking for a relief. Please tell us that it is not true that there will be robots in front of the classroom within 10 years. So I satisfied them easily. I said, in 10 years, there will be no robots in front of a classroom. And this happened among the audience. Thank you. And then I said, the reason why there are no robots in front of the classroom in 10 years is that in 10 years, there are no longer classrooms. So I made friends, and instantly they were gone. And this is when you look at technology and how we might use it, that the transformation of education, which is based on finding jobs and become successful, is transforming in finding your potential and create value to live a happy life. And that means personalized learning, and that's not done in classrooms. So you really have to look in a different way to the world to see what is happening. And what is happening is that technology is used by many companies to create better, the good, a better world. But also technology is used based on our needs or our greed. I'm not sure what is leading here. It's interesting to view. So when you look to the world upside down, because it's shifted 180 degrees, you don't see a pig, you don't see meat, you don't see a forbidden animal. You see an animal that is for 99% DNA is equal to humans. So that we can transfer a part of the heart of the pig, mutated by our stem cells, put it in our body, and you don't have to take medicine for the rejection of this weird organ. So this is a life-saving animal. So when you look to a pig like that, it's suddenly a different animal. 40 medicine, pepsin and insulin included, are coming from pigs. It's a life-saving animal. So that is how you should listen to my story, how you should reflect technology and its impact. I give you an example how difficult it is. Just before the summer, I was invited by the European Central Bank to talk on a conference in Frankfurt for 1,000 institutional investors, mortgage companies, banks, insurance companies. And I asked them, 1,000 among the audience, 1,000 people I asked, do you think that the content of a bottle of Coca-Cola is healthy for people? Will you please stand up if you think it's healthy? Everybody remain seated. And then I asked them, do you agree that the content of a bottle of Coca-Cola is destroying social value? It leads to all kinds of diseases, sugar disease, obesitas, and so on. So please remain seated if you think that it destroys social value. Everybody remain seated. And then I asked, do you invest in Coca-Cola? Because it's a good share, making a lot of money, no risk. And then they were confused. And on row 1, somebody was really getting annoyed. He was on his chair like this. So I walked to this gentleman and said, are you okay? He said, and then I asked him the question, I'm not sure, but it looks like you work for Coca-Cola. And he said, yes, I am the vice president of Coca-Cola, United States. And I have to do a keynote after you. I was not very well prepared. I know that, I knew that I had to talk about the 17 Sustainable Development Goals, but I was not aware that there was a representative of Coca-Cola talking after me. So I said, let's put something extra to it because he is here on front row. So I asked the audience, have you any idea how many plastic bottles Coca-Cola makes? 3,500 per second. And half of it gets into nature, and half of that, 25% in total, gets into the ocean. And if you eat a lot of fish or shrimp, you might get in the near future a problem of not being in a position to make children. So I believe that the world is better off if a company like Coca-Cola does not exist. But you have to turn upside down to follow it. So they might use technology to achieve more, but what is more in this example, right? So we have to put it in that perspective. We have to put in perspective that this is a fantastic company, Suikerberg, using great technology, but they have a business model which is 20th century based. It has the mantra, business using people and technology as a resource to make more money. While we need in the 21st century a different mantra, people using business and technology as a force for good, to create a better world and to make some money. It's a different sequence. So we have to keep in mind that technology is great, but it is also an imminent danger, right? Because the moral of Silicon Valley in general is when we can create a technology and there is a market and we will make money out of it, we dump it on the market. And we forget the things that Satya just mentioned, which is all about ethics. The world don't need more technical people, but we need more ethical people, ethical professionals, right? So let's have a look at a world that is shifting rapidly to a next phase in our society. It's part of our evolution. And the first driver, and the one that I will deal with most of the time, is this one. And the first one of the three that is driver one in total are exponential technologies which we recognize every day in our life and work. I find them appealing, I find them interesting, but it is not what it is all about. Technology becomes relevant and important when it leads to social innovation, and when social innovations lead to the democratization of products, of services, of ownership, and in the end also the democracy itself. Then technology is useful and relevant. So let's have a couple of examples where technology, exponential technologies, leads to social innovation, leading to a better world, the democratization of product, services, and ownership. Example one. The newest generation of solar panels from Tesla's factory Solar City helps us, society, when we organize ourselves with 10,000 people and more, giving us the possibility to create electricity at a price of 2.7 cents per kilowatt, where the industry is creating electricity based on coal or gas at a price of 4.6 cents per kilowatt. So we, society, can generate cheaper electricity than the industry when we organize ourselves, create a corporation or another entity based on our government, not by the general government, but by our governance. And we can create, and it happens on more than 1,000 spaces in Europe, we, the people, generate our own electricity. When we create more than we need, we store it in our own batteries. When they're full, we store it in our electric cars, which are also connected to the local grid. And when we are still remaining with energy, we sell it to people at a price we, society, decides. So what is happening in this example? In this example, we, citizens, we, the people, become a true partner, an equal partner to governments and the industry by totally facilitating our own needs based on electricity. It's interesting. So this is a good example of technologies leading to social innovations, we for each other, with each other, leading to the democratization of energy. Another example which I think is very appealing. It's happening here in the Netherlands. It's a company called Here. Youngsters from the Technical University Eindhoven who are now commercializing the solar cars, where they are now for 5 years world champion in driving from the West Australian to East Australian on the sun without charging. They are commercializing their technology, which is proven, and you can today order at their website a Lightyear 1, the first car that will be introduced in 2022. And when you enter, I live in Abu Dhabi, and I drive only 10,000 kilometers a year, you only have to charge it once a year. And for the rest, it drives on the sun. Proven technology. When you enter, I live in Amsterdam, and I drive 10,000 kilometers a year, you have to charge it 17 times, 17 a year. For the rest, it's driving on the sun. Is that interesting technology? Yes, it is. When you enter, I live in The Hague, I drive 30,000 kilometers an hour, you have to charge it less than 30 times, less than a week. So that's interesting technology. The promise of Lex Hoefsloot, who is the CEO of Lightyear, that the Lightyear 4, which will be introduced to the market by the end of next decade, gives us the opportunity to drive 120 kilometers an hour in the sun, and then the car will create more electricity than it needs to drive 120 kilometers an hour. So an oplaadpaal will get a new dimension. And we will see new business models, right? Because we just sell the energy we created by driving to others, which is interesting as a social innovation and the democratization of energy. That is the true essence of technology, I believe. Blockchain technology is nowadays used as an alternative for, let's say, discussable labels who say that something is social or sustainable. We will use blockchain to make transparent in a full chain of coffee beans when it was planted for the tree and when it was at the supermarket getting in our basket. And the full supply chain of a coffee bean or orange juice will be made transparent by using blockchain technology, which is helping to democratize data for us, the people, to buy social and sustainable, responsible products. And that is what this technology is all about, to create a better world, to help us as a society. At MIT, we decided last year that from 2020, all our lectures will be accessible for 7.8 billion people. In average, we give now lectures at MIT for 176,000 students. Only 400 are physically present. The rest is following a lecture on distance on all continents. The lecture I gave last week was for 176,112 students from all continents in an age from 17 till 102. It's a democratization of academic education. We want to achieve a situation in 2020 that all our lectures will be accessible no matter where you are, no matter how many people who wants to follow the lecture. And we also decided, which leads to the democratization of academic education, that from 2020 all our lectures will be free. Nowadays it costs $60,000 a year. From 2020 all our lectures will be totally free for everybody around the world, which is about the democratization of academic education. It's a different mindset, giving us the opportunity to create a better world. You might think that is not very useful because 90% of the people don't have the brains, the IQ, to process academic education. But that will democratize also in the next decade based on artificial intelligence. We believe at MIT, and we are one of the epic centers in the world if we talk about the development of artificial intelligence, working closely with NASA. We believe that somewhere halfway in the next decade, you can buy a chip, put it in a smartphone, tablet, or computing, and bringing you for $200 the IQ 100 points of one human being. So IQ, thinking power, not emotionally, not socially, but IQ, processing of data, seeing patterns in data, will democratize fully in the next decade. Is that interesting? Look at the faces. My grandchildren in 2040 will think that artificial intelligence is a commodity. It's like air. You can't live a decent life without artificial intelligence. That's how how they will perceive artificial intelligence in 2040. In 2040, you can buy, inflation included for $200, the IQ of 100,000 people. It's an exponential technology. So if we can buy 100,000 multiplied by 100 IQ points for $200, what will that mean? And look at the faces. People say that I can't imagine. Well, of course we can't imagine, but our children cannot imagine that it is not available today. Sir, if I'm short-sighted and I can't see you very well and I put on glasses, do you think that it is weird? No, of course not. Are glasses made by nature? No. Are your glasses made by God, sir? No, it's not. It's made by humans. So we find it very normal if you're short-sighted to wear glasses. We find it very normal when you can't hear that you use a hearing aid. Now you can't study very well, then you use a third cortex to study well. What is the difference? What is the difference? But that is not what I would like to stipulate. I'm talking about create a better world. So this is a tool to create a better world. I give you one example. I was giving this example to a very elite lawyer firm a couple of weeks ago here in the Netherlands. And one of the managing partners raised his arm and said, if artificial intelligence is democratizing IQ, nobody wants to become a garbage man, everybody wants to become a lawyer. I believe that's a limited belief, but I could follow his thinking. So I said to him, I take you back to 2003, when the garbage man in New York went strike. And the mayor said, I'm not breakable. I won't be blackmailed by garbage men in New York, serving 16 million New Yorkers. Day 2, 2 meters of garbage at Madison Avenue. Day 3, 4 meters garbage at Park Avenue. Day 5, the rats were entering Trump Tower. Nowadays, they're coming out of Trump Tower. Day 6, all kinds of diseases were on stage to infect New York. Day 7, the army came in New York. Day 8, the mayor break. So nowadays, a garbage man doing 5-year service in New York makes $85,000. An aspirant garbage man in New York, first-year contract, makes $35,000. Why? Because 16 million New Yorkers found out how important they are, how much ecological and social value they create. And that's how they are paid. So I asked this managing partner, who creates more value? A managing partner making $600 an hour or a garbage man in New York? So he was a bit puzzled. And then he said again, but that might be true, but if you are so intelligent, you don't want to become a garbage man. I said, you're wrong. I know, I have a friend who got his MBA from Harvard, who is a garbage man for 9 years. But he's also extremely intelligent. He is a vlogger, and he has more than 160 million vlog followers when he talks about social entrepreneurship. So he's doing a great job serving society, creating a lot of value, and also intellectually, he can do his thing while he was born. Is that not interesting? So the democratization of IQ, making us equal in the way we learn from an intelligent perspective, gives us maybe an invitation to reconsider that should we pay those who are the longest at the university more than people who create much more value. Now we talk about technology that might create a better world. Don't you agree? So that is interesting about technology. So when we look at a nurse who nurses people at their home so that they can stay at home for more than 20 years instead of being put in an elderly home, who creates more social value? Who sees to it that we create less economic damage? A nurse nursing people at home or an average doctor? So what should we do in appreciating people and rewarding people if this democratizes? If we do it well, we will create a better world. and we will start thinking how to use technology to create more equality among people. And when we talk about the democratization of data, which is very important, we understand that when a young woman, Miss Yamato, 36 years old, suffering lung cancer, reports to an hospital in Philadelphia in 2017, where 4 doctors looked at her and see that this form of lung cancer was unfamiliar to them, that the form of cell splitting that caused this lung cancer was also unfamiliar to them, and they were tending to say to her, "We're sorry, we have no idea what kind of lung cancer you have. We have no idea how to treat you. If you're lucky, you have 2 years to live." Then we put all information in Watson, and in 17 seconds, Watson said, this is the cell splitting, this is the form of lung cancer, this experimental drug where the doctors had no awareness of because it didn't have FDA approval, will have 95% chance that this woman will be cured in 6 months, which happened. So that's interesting. But I would like to talk about the democratization of data. Most hospitals are now getting out of the project with Watson because they don't trust IBM. Why? Because they ask IBM, can you put it in a business model so that 7.8 billion people, in the near future 10 billion people, will benefit from a technology like this, and that you will not sell it exclusively to academic hospitals at a huge price. And IBM don't want to give guarantees that this technology will be used for the benefits of the total society. So that is interesting. This is about the democratization of data, but also getting into our minds that we should create a situation, open platforms, so that everybody will benefit from it, instead of only a couple of billionaires who wants to become more billionaire than they already are. Right? So I have 5 more minutes to go to get to my summarization. One more example, using artificial intelligence in the democratization of skills. At MIT, we are involved in an expedition, and we don't call it an experience, but we call it an expedition, where we work together with 3 doctors, brain surgeons and heart surgeons. And when they do a 3 double bypass, we have cameras on every position so that they register in computers everything the eye of a doctor sees, which is not remarkable. We all know that it's also used during a soccer game. But we also connect the brains of a doctor doing a 3 double bypass to a computer. And in 2018, we are in a position at MIT that we are able to register 50% of his conscious thinking in a computer and 30% of his unconscious thinking into a computer. And we expect around half this century that 90% of what we think can be registered and 80% of what we think unconsciously can be registered. So what will that bring in the second part of this century? That you can still go to a hospital and be operated by a doctor, which costs you $140,000. That's an option. Or you go 1 clinic further, where the operation only costs $400, and you are operated by robots connected to computer based on the experience of thousands of doctors, based on hundreds of thousands of operations. So we have to think, if we talk about technology, not only about how can we achieve more, but how can we create a better world for all of us. So what normally happens when you address topics like this and present them to people like you? A lot of people read the word fear. And most people give the interpretation to that word fear as fuck everything and run. Which is not what we should do, right? Most people read in the word fear false evidence appearing real. We create our own problems by our own thinking that we are here to make more money, to be successful, instead of create value for others. And before you know it, survival of our companies or survival in our own lives for the time that we have is the goal, which is of course not the case. We are here on this planet as a human being, but also as a company or an institute to create value for others. And when we look at our challenges, and it can be climate change, it can be social economic challenges, it can be a spiritual challenge in this century to find our own expectations and our own dreams and our own ambition and live the life we really want instead of live the life through expectations of others, then we might read in the word fear, facing evidence, look at reality and rise. Social innovation and democratization by using technology. And if we do so, it will get a fourth interpretation, the word fear. Feeling excited and ready for change, right? So you make your own choice how you interpret the word fear. Summarizing this story of 30 minutes in 10 words of 2 letters. If it is to be, it is up to me, and me, and me, and we, together with Microsoft. Thank you very much.